The red door was shaking. Not from the wind. Not from the storm that was tearing through the compound outside, bending the big trees sideways and throwing rain against the mansion walls like gravel. It was shaking from inside. Like something behind it had been waiting for this exact night to remind James that it was still there. James stood barefoot in the long corridor, water dripping from his soaked agbada onto the marble floor he had imported from Italy. His hands were trembling. His face was wet, not from the rain, but from tears. A grown man. A man with 4 cars and 12 rooms and a generator that never went off. Standing in his own house in the dark, crying like a child who had seen something his eyes were never supposed to see. He pressed his back against the wall and stared at the door. The red glow around its edges was stronger tonight. Pulsing slowly. Like a heartbeat. "Ada," he whispered. The corridor gave nothing back. It never did. Not this late. For years, the people of Obi village had looked at this man and felt the particular ache that comes from watching someone else have everything you want. They watched the mansion go up on the hill, room by room, floor by floor. They watched the cars arrive. They watched a woman appear from nowhere, beautiful, quiet, like something assembled from a dream, and become his wife. They called him Chief James. They bowed. They fought for seats near him at ceremonies. They named their sons after him. But when the ceremonies ended and the women gathered near their evening fires and leaned close so only the right ears could hear, they said something else entirely. "No woman who goes near that man survives it. His wife is not from here. Look at her eyes. He made a deal. A very bad deal." Nobody said it to his face. Men with money are rarely told the truth to their faces. But standing in front of that red door with his heart hammering in his chest and the storm raging outside, James was beginning to understand that everything the village had whispered was not whisper at all. It was warning. To understand how it ended, you have to go back to where it started. Back before the mansion, before the cars, before the title. Back when he was just James, no chief, no sir, no nothing, a young man who climbed palm trees before sunrise and came down smelling like fermentation and hard work. He was not a bad person in those days. He was gentle, actually. Slow to anger, quick to laugh. He had a handful of friends and one person who mattered more than all of them combined. Her name was Ada. She lived 3 compounds away from him, with her mother who sold pepper and dried fish at the morning market. Ada was not rich. She wore the same dresses in rotation and fixed the tiers herself. But she had a kind of energy that made whatever room she was in feel more alive. When she talked with her whole body. When she laughed, the whole street heard it. She and James had grown up side by side. They were not together, not officially, not with any announcement or ceremony. But everyone who saw them together understood what they were to each other. The kind of understanding that does not need words because the words would only make it smaller. They spent evenings sitting outside her mother's compound, Ada cracking groundnuts, James drinking the leftover wine he could not sell, talking about everything. "When I get money," James said one evening, "I will build a proper house. Cement walls. Real roof." "Just cement?" Ada raised an eyebrow. "If you are going to talk, James, talk big. Tiles. I want tiles." "Tiles then. And a sitting room with a fan." "Fan," he agreed, laughing. "And curtains." She pointed at him. "Not the cheap ones that let in light from the sides. Real curtains." "You are very particular for someone who does not have a house." "I am particular because I know what I want," she said simply, and threw a groundnut shell at him. He caught it. He looked at her laughing face and felt something so warm and obvious in his chest that he did not even try to name it. She was his person. That was the simplest way to put it. In a life that was mostly difficult and unglamorous, she was the thing that made it feel like enough. But the world outside their evening conversations had different ideas about enough. The day that changed James happened on a Tuesday. He had gone to deliver palm wine to a wealthy man on the other side of the village, a man named Chief Solomon, who owned a petrol station, a block of flats in the city, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having been told no. James arrived at the compound with his clay pot, knocked at the gate, was let in by a gateman who looked at him the way people look at furniture. He found Solomon in the back, sitting with 3 other wealthy men in white agbadas, laughing loudly about something that had nothing to do with James. "Sir," James said. "Your palm wine." Solomon did not look at him. "Sir," James said again. Solomon glanced over. His eyes moved from James's shoes, cracked along the left sole, to his shirt, patched at the shoulder, and something happened in his expression. Not recognition. Entertainment. "Is this the tapper from near the waterway?" Solomon asked the man beside him. Not James. The man beside him. "Yes," the man said. "The poor one." Solomon reached into his pocket, counted out coins, and dropped them on the ground near James's feet. Not in his hand. On the ground. Pick it up, Solomon said, already looking away. The other men were watching. 2 of them were smiling. James stood completely still. His jaw tightened. His hands went stiff at his sides. Pick it up, I said, Solomon repeated, louder, like James was either slow or deaf. Or leave it and go. What is your time worth anyway? James bent down. He picked up every coin. One by one, slowly, while they all watched. While his face burned. While something that had been soft inside him began to go hard. He walked out without a word. He went home. He sat on his mat and stared at the wall for a long time. The coins sat in his palm. He looked at them. Then he made a decision. Not a plan, not yet, just a decision. He was never going to be that man on the ground again. He did not care what the alternative cost. He did not care what road he had to take. He was going to become something that could not be humiliated. Ada found him like that the next morning. Sitting outside his compound, still and quiet in a way that was new. You look different, she said, sitting near him. I am thinking, he said. About what? About how to stop being nothing. She was quiet. Then, you are not nothing, James. You know what I mean. She put her hand on his arm. Not to comfort him exactly. To make sure he could feel her there. There are many roads, she said carefully. Don't choose the fastest one just because it looks the most direct. Some roads that look direct take you somewhere you never planned to go. He looked at her hand on his arm. Then at her face. Then somewhere past her face, at something she could not see. I'm just thinking, he said. She stayed a little longer and then went home. She looked back once at the gate. He did not look up. He had already heard the stories. Every person who grew up in Obi had heard them. Stories about a river at the edge of the eastern forest, a river the old people called Aji River. They said it ran backward on certain nights. They said if you were desperate enough, truly desperate, the kind of desperate that comes from having nothing and wanting everything, and you went there alone at midnight, something would come to the surface and listen to you. Most people treated those stories the way you treat old furniture, kept in the house, never used, vaguely comforting just by being there. But James was not interested in comfort anymore. He waited for a moonless night. He left after dark, told no one, wrapped a cloth around himself, and walked east into the forest. The forest at night was not friendly. Things moved in the trees above him. The ground grew soft and strange under his feet the deeper he went. The air became heavier, like the forest was pressing down on him gently, testing whether he would turn back. He did not turn back. He found the river. It was wide and black and caught no reflection. Not the stars, not the trees, nothing. The ground near it was cold even though the night was warm. No insects. No frogs. Complete silence, which is not a natural thing in a forest at night. James stood at the edge and felt stupid. He had walked all this way on the strength of village gossip and his own rage. I need something, he said to the water. Feeling foolish. Nothing. He waited. I have nothing, he said louder. I want to be someone. I will give whatever you ask. The surface of the river moved. Not from wind. From beneath. James stepped back. Then stopped himself and held his ground. Something rose from the water. Not a monster. A shape. A woman's shape, made of dark water and low light, standing on the surface without sinking, tilting her head at him the way a person tilts their head when they are deciding whether a thing is worth their time. She did not speak at first. She seemed to ask her question with her hands, with her posture. I want wealth, James said. His voice was steadier than he expected. The kind that makes men treat you like a man. She spoke. Her voice did not come from any direction outside him. It came from inside his head, calm and ancient. You will have wealth, she said. More than you can count. Men will call you chief. You will have a home that makes people stop on the road. And you will have a wife, a beautiful wife who will come to you when it is time. What do I give? James asked. 3 rules, she said. Your wife must never speak in sunlight. She must never eat food cooked by human hands. And in the home you will build, there is a door, a red door. You must never open it. Not for any reason. Not for curiosity. Not for fear. Not for love. Never. That is all? Something shifted in her form. There is one more thing. Half of your soul will be taken and kept here. You will feel it missing every day. That is the cost of the contract. James thought about the coins on the ground. About Solomon's back, already turned before James had even finished picking them up. About Ada's hand on his arm and how he had not deserved it and had not been able to receive it properly. He thought about all of that and then he said, I agree. Cold moved through him. Starting at his chest, spreading out to his fingers, down to his feet. He gasped and grabbed a tree branch. The cold passed. But something went with it when it went. Something warm and central. He could feel the space where it had been immediately, a hollow that was not quite pain but was not nothing either. The river was still. The spirit was gone. James walked home through the dark forest feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. He did not stop at Ada's compound. He did not want her to see his face yet. By the following week, a man came from the city. A contract. Government construction. Material supply. The number the man put in front of James was more money than James had seen in his entire life laid end to end. There was no reason for this man to find James. No connection, no prior meeting, no explanation. James did not ask for one. He signed. In 3 months, Chief James of Obi had a car. In 6 months, 3 cars. In a year, he was pouring the foundation of his mansion on the hill. The village watched and could not explain it. The palm wine tapper had become a big man overnight. People greeted him differently. Men who had mocked him came to him with their palms open. Women who had never noticed him now. He sat at the front of the church where important people sit and nobody told him to move. Ada came to him on a Thursday afternoon. She stood outside his compound gate, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes taking in the half-built mansion behind him, the workers, the cars under the shade trees. "James," she said. "Ada." He looked at her with eyes that were already somewhere else. "You have not come to visit." "I have been busy. You can see that." She was quiet for a moment. Just looking at him. Reading his face the way she had always been able to read it. "Are you still yourself?" she asked. "I am better than myself," he said. Something went out of her expression when he said that. Just, went out. Like a candle. "Okay," she said. That was all. Just okay. She turned and walked away and did not look back. James told himself he felt nothing. He was wrong. He felt something sharp move through his chest, but he was already expert by then at moving past things quickly, at putting lids on things, at not looking at what was under the lid. Ada fell sick not long after. He heard it from other people. First that she was under the weather, then that the sickness had no name the clinic could give it, then that she had stopped eating properly, stopped going out, stopped being the loud laughing person the whole street had always heard. Then one evening, a boy came to James's compound with a message. Ada was gone. He sat with that word for a long time in a big empty room full of expensive furniture. He sat with it the way you sit with something too heavy to carry and too painful to put down. He drank. Several nights in a row. Then he put her somewhere in the back of his mind, in the same place he put everything that hurt too much to look at, and he went back to building his life. The wife arrived on a Sunday. He had not sent for anyone. Had not announced any wedding plans. His gateman came to his bedroom door that morning and said, "Chief, there is a woman outside. She says she belongs here." James went to the gate. She was standing outside in a plain white dress, holding nothing. No bag. No car. Nobody with her. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever stood close to, tall, still, her eyes carrying a quality he could not name, like she was seeing more than what was physically in front of her. She said nothing. She only looked at him. And James felt, without being able to explain it, that he had been expecting her. "Come in," he said. She came in. He called her Ruth. The name arrived in his mouth without thought, and he wondered briefly why he had chosen it, and then the wondering passed and it was already her name. Their wedding was small. James told people she was from another state. Nobody asked too many questions because rich men are rarely questioned about anything. The first weeks were unsettling in the way that beautiful and wrong things are often unsettling. Ruth moved through the mansion as though she had always lived there. She never got lost. She never knocked into things in the night. She rearranged objects in ways that made the house more comfortable, though nobody ever saw her do it. Things simply appeared differently in the morning. She did not speak in the daytime. Not one word. She responded to people with gestures, with small movements of her hands and expressions that somehow carried meaning, but no voice. Never a voice while the sun was up. At night, in the dark, she would sometimes speak quietly to James. Small things. The sound of the rain on the zinc roof. The way the air felt when a storm was coming. Nothing that should have mattered, but somehow it mattered. She never ate. Every meal placed in front of her she sat with, hands folded, until James finished and the plates were cleared. He remembered the rules. He did not push. What he did not expect was the emptiness. He thought he had been lonely before. He thought having a wife would change the hollow feeling he woke up with every morning, the feeling of something missing that he could not locate or name. He thought warmth would come back into his chest. But Ruth, for all her presence and beauty, did not give back heat. She was there and she was loyal and she was perfect and she felt like admiring something behind glass. He could see her but he could not reach her. He could speak to her but something between them never quite connected. He began to go out. First just late-night drives. Then drinks with certain men. Then a woman. Her name was Grace. She was cheerful, a little loud, ate too much at restaurants, laughed at things that were not even that funny. James found that he wanted all of those things desperately. He set her up in a flat in the city. 8 weeks later, Grace was in the hospital. The doctors were confused. She had been perfectly healthy. There was nothing they could point to. She declined fast, and by the time James got the call that it was serious, it was already too late. Grace died on a Wednesday. James told himself it was coincidence. He grieved briefly and moved on. The second woman was a teacher named Miriam, who was sharp and funny and knew exactly what kind of arrangement she was entering. She lasted 2 months before she stopped answering her phone. Her apartment was found empty one morning, clothes and all. She was reported missing and never found. After the third woman fell sick and the fourth one disappeared, the village was no longer keeping its voice down. Every woman near Chief James dies or disappears. 3 now. Maybe 4. His wife doesn't age. Have you looked at her? Same face as the day she arrived. That woman came from somewhere we don't talk about in daylight. James heard all of it. He hired more gatemen. He stopped going to certain places. He told himself the deaths were terrible coincidences. He told himself the stories were jealous people doing what jealous people do. Then at his cousin's wedding, a woman James had spoken to briefly at a gathering months prior, not even a proper meeting, just a conversation, appeared at the reception looking pale and unwell. She was dead before the month ended. He had barely spoken to her. And Ruth, through all of it, said nothing. She sat in the mansion, still and watchful. She never accused. Never asked where he had been. Never cried, not that he saw. She only watched him. The watching was worse than anything she could have said. His younger sister, Rachel, came to stay during the dry season of the 3rd year. Rachel was the kind of person who said exactly what she thought without softening at first, which James had always found annoying and which he now found necessary. She arrived with one bag and open eyes, and within 2 days she had seen enough to disturb her deeply. "James," she said on the 3rd morning, cornering him in the kitchen before the cook arrived. "Something is wrong in this house. You have barely been here 3 days." "I know what I am seeing," she said. "Your wife doesn't eat. I have watched every meal. She touches nothing. Not a spoon, not a cup of water." "She has a condition," James said. "I touched her arm yesterday," Rachel said. "Outside in that afternoon heat. Every person there was sweating. She was cold, James. Stone cold." He kept his face still. "And she sleeps with her eyes open." Rachel's voice dropped. "I passed your room last night and the door was not fully closed and I looked in and she was lying there, eyes wide open, completely still, staring at the ceiling. I called her name twice. She didn't move. The kitchen was quiet enough to hear the birds outside." "Rachel," James started. "What did you do?" she said. Not loudly, but with the kind of weight that makes loudness unnecessary. "What did you get yourself into? Because things like this don't happen by themselves. People don't get rich the way you got rich. Women don't keep dying around a man for no reason. Something is powering all of this, James, and I want you to tell me what it is." He pulled away from her. "Keep your voice down in my house. Then give me a reason to." He couldn't. He left the kitchen. Rachel went looking that afternoon, while James was on a long phone call with a contractor. She was the kind of person who needed to see things with her own eyes before she could accept them, and she had already accepted too much on faith in this house. She found the red door at the far end of the east corridor, behind a curtain that seemed designed to make you forget it was there. A small, heavy door, painted deep red, glowing faintly along its edges. A key hanging nearby on a hook, mostly hidden behind a pipe. She held the key for a long time. Then she took it to James. "What is this?" She held it up between them. The color left James's face. "Where did you find that?" "I found it. There is a red door in your east corridor with a glow coming from under it that is not from any bulb or lamp I can explain. And I want to know what is behind it." He reached for the key. "Give me that." She pulled it back. "What is behind the door, James?" "A storeroom." You went white. "Your hands are shaking. That is not a storeroom and we both know it." He took the key from her firmly. "You are not to go near that part of the house. I mean that, Rachel. It is not a request." She stared at him for a long moment. "You are afraid of your own house," she said quietly. "That is what I am looking at. You are afraid of something inside your own house." He walked away and said nothing. That night he could not sleep. He lay on his back staring at the ceiling, Ruth still and silent beside him, the key under his pillow. He thought about the river. About the hollow in his chest where something used to be. About Ada's face the last time he had seen it, full of something he had not allowed himself to receive. He thought about all the women. About Grace. About Miriam. About the others. He thought about whether any of it had been worth it. And somewhere in the weight of all that thinking, exhaustion pulled him under. He did not hear Rachel get up. He did not hear her ease the key out from beneath his pillow. He did not hear her walk the long corridor to the east wing. What woke him was a sound he had no name for. Not a scream. Not a crash. Something older than either of those, like the sound a world makes when something sealed inside it is finally opened. He was on his feet before he was fully awake. He ran. The storm outside was at its worst. Rain hammered the walls. Lightning threw sharp white shadows across the corridor as he ran down it, and in those flashes of light, the mansion looked like something that had already started becoming a ruin. He turned into the east corridor. The red door was open. Rachel was standing in the doorway, one hand on the frame, not moving, like she had been stopped mid-step by something her body could not walk past. The light from inside was red and slow and it covered her face entirely. Rachel! He grabbed her shoulder. She turned toward him slowly, like someone returning from very far away. Her eyes were wide. James, she whispered. It's in there. He looked past her. The room was small. Much smaller than it should have been given where it sat in the house. The walls were dark and bare. In the center of the room, on a plain wooden table, sat a jar. Glass. Dark red. And inside it, something was moving, something soft and pale, pressing against the glass from inside, moving the way something moves when it is alive and confined and has been confined for a very long time. James walked into the room. Every step felt like walking through something thick. The air resisted him. He reached the table and looked down at the jar and felt a recognition so specific and so impossible that it bypassed his mind entirely and landed somewhere deeper. He knew what it was. Because he remembered what had left him that night by the river. The warmth that had drained out of him. The soft center of himself that had gone somewhere cold and stopped coming back. The part of him that had loved Ada simply and completely, that had sat outside her mother's compound and meant every word he said, that had held things gently, that part had gone into this jar and had been sitting here ever since, keeping the contract alive, keeping the deal running, keeping Chief James rich and respected and hollow. His soul. Half of it. Right here. He reached out toward the jar. I would not do that. He spun around. Ruth was in the doorway. White dress. Hands at her sides. Completely still. And she was speaking. In the middle of the night, her voice in the room. But the voice was different from the soft nighttime voice he had grown accustomed to. It was older. It carried something under it like deep water carries cold. You don't feel it on the surface, only when you go down. Ruth, he said. You gave me that name, she said. You know you gave me that name. What are you saying? Think about why you chose it. Think about what name was already in your mouth when she walked away from your gate that Thursday. Think, James. He stared at her. She did not blink. And then it moved through him. A slow, horrible understanding, arriving the way understanding arrives when some part of you has already known for a long time and simply refused to let it surface. He had named her Ruth. And the name he had been swallowing for 3 years, the name he had put under everything else, the name he reached for in the night when the hollow in his chest was too loud to ignore, was Ada. No, he said. Small. Almost a child's voice. Yes, she said. Ada is dead. She got sick and she got sick because you chose, Ruth said. Because you looked at what you had and decided it was not enough. Because you went to that river and made a contract using the love you threw away as fuel. She did not simply die, James. When she left this world, the river took her. And the spirit bound her to your contract, because the river understood what you had sacrificed to make your deal. The woman you abandoned became the wife the deal promised you. That is the kind of logic the river uses. Rachel had sat down on the floor of the corridor, her back against the wall, her face in her hands. I did not know, James said. You did not ask, Ruth said. She took one step into the room. You never ask what you are actually paying until the payment is already gone. He looked at the jar. Then at her face. He made himself look at her face properly for the first time, past the stillness, past the distance, and he found it. The specific set of her jaw when she was being serious. The quality of patience in her eyes that was not passive but deliberate. The way she held herself when she wanted you to understand something completely before you responded. Ada, he said. She did not correct him. Every woman, he said. Grace. Miriam. All of them. The contract demanded loyalty, she said. Not my will. The vow itself. I am not a jealous woman, James. I am a bound one. And the binding does not make exceptions. He put his hand over his mouth. He stood there for a moment with everything he had pushed under finally breaking the surface all at once, the grief of Ada's death that he had never actually grieved, the guilt of every woman who had come to harm because of his greed and his loneliness, the years of wealth that had felt like living inside a beautiful box with no air. I am so sorry, he said. The words came out broken. Ada, I am so sorry. I chose wrong. I chose wrong every time I had a choice and You chose what you chose, she said. Not harshly. Not gently either. Simply. You chose wealth over love. So you were given wealth with no peace. You were given everything and made to feel nothing. That was the real punishment, James. Not the loss at the end. The years in the middle. He looked at the jar. Is there anything I can do, he said. Is there any way to? The door is open, she said. Those 4 words landed in the room and immediately the house responded. A deep sound from the foundations. Not an earthquake, something more deliberate. The sound of a structure that has been waiting for permission to stop pretending. The jar cracked down its center. And from that crack, something came pouring back into James, not visibly, but physically, felt in his chest and his hands and the back of his throat, warmth, rushing back in, filling the hollow that had been there for 3 years, painful the way returning blood is painful in a limb that has been numb too long. He grabbed the table and gasped. Rachel screamed from the doorway. Ruth, Ada, walked to the center of the room. She stood still. And her form began to change. Not violently. Gently. The way the last of a fire goes, not out all at once, but becoming something quieter, smaller, then not there. She looked at him. I am not angry with you, she said. I was. But the dead let go of anger eventually. It costs too much to hold. Are you? His voice broke completely. Are you at peace? I will be, she said. After this. She raised one hand, palm outward, slightly, the same gesture she had made 1,000 times when they were young, sitting outside her mother's compound, when he was talking too much and she needed him to stop and simply listen. He stopped. He listened. You chose wrong, she said. But you knew it. Some part of you knew every time. That is what made it so heavy to carry. Then she was smoke. White and quiet and rising, through the ceiling and gone. The red door swung shut on its own. The lock clicked once, firmly. Then the mansion began to fall apart. The west wall first. A low groan and then plaster coming down in chunks. The corridor ceiling dropping. The electricity cut and everything went dark except for the lightning coming through the high windows, and in those flashes James could see the walls cracking from top to bottom like something was pressing outward from inside them. James! Rachel grabbed his arm from behind. We have to go right now. They ran. Through the collapsing corridor, dodging ceiling pieces, James pulling Rachel behind him and Rachel pulling James forward in the same motion, 2 people who had not been close enough for years suddenly holding each other up in the dark. The main door stuck. James hit it with his shoulder once, twice, and it gave and they fell out into the storm together. The rain was brutal. They stumbled across the compound, away from the house, and James turned around. He watched his mansion die. Room by room. Section by section. The walls that had taken a year to build came down in minutes. The roof folded inward. The floors followed. And when it was done there was nothing left on that hill but rubble and rain, and the 4 cars that had been in the compound were simply gone, not crushed, not buried, gone, as if they had never been parked there. Rachel was shaking beside him. James was not shaking. He was past shaking. He was somewhere on the other side of shaking, in a place that had no name, where a man stands when everything he built out of the wrong materials has finally collapsed and he is still standing and does not know what that means. When he woke, he was in the forest. Lying on the ground between tree roots, morning light coming through the canopy in thin yellow lines. Mud on his face. His shoes gone. His ring gone. His pockets empty. He lay there for a long time before he sat up. Then he sat there for a long time before he stood. Then he stood there for a long time, in the forest, with nothing, before he began to walk. He walked back toward Obi village. He came through the eastern path, the same path he had walked out on 3 years ago going the other direction, full of anger and hunger and certainty. He walked into the village from that same path now with no shoes, torn clothes, mud drying on his skin. People saw him. First they stared. Then they called out. Chief? Chief James. The title sounded strange now. It bounced off him and fell. He kept walking. He passed the houses he knew. He passed the children who used to run beside his car. He passed the women who used to greet him with both hands. They all stopped and stared. He passed the compound where Ada had lived. Her mother's house. The gate was old now, the paint faded. He stopped there for a moment. Just a moment. Then he kept walking. He walked until his feet were bleeding from the stones. He began to see things that were not there. Not in the dramatic way of stories, not creatures or visions. Just Ada's face. In the wrong places. On strangers walking past. On the surface of puddles. In the space between 2 buildings. Just her face, looking at him the way she had always looked at him when she needed him to understand something. He began to talk to her. Not in whispers. Out loud, on the roadside, while people passed and moved away from him quickly. I know, he said to the air. I know, I know, I know. He said it the way a man says something he needed to say for 3 years and never found the opening. The village stopped calling him chief. They started crossing to the other side of the road when they saw him coming, not with cruelty, but with the discomfort people feel around someone whose suffering is too visible and too close. He slept where he found himself at night. Sometimes in the old mud house that still stood near the mango trees. Sometimes outside it. Sometimes in the forest. He ate when someone left food. He drank water from the same streams he had climbed trees beside when he was young. Rachel found him 3 weeks after the mansion fell. She had been looking. She sat with him on the ground outside the mud house and did not try to get him to stand up or come inside or be presentable. She just sat with him. You are going to be okay, she said after a long time. He looked at her. Not now, she said. Not soon. But one day. He looked away. She loved you, Rachel said quietly. Ada. Even at the end. I heard it in her voice. I know, he said. That was the worst part. He did not get better quickly. He was not that kind of story, the kind where a man loses everything and rebuilds and learns his lesson neatly. He wandered. He talked to himself. He frightened people without meaning to. He forgot what day it was. He forgot, for whole stretches of time, what his name had been before it had a title attached to it. But slowly, the way things heal when they are given no choice but to heal, some of the wandering settled. He found himself back at the mud house more nights than not. He found his old tapping tools still in the corner. He picked them up one morning and looked at them for a long time. Then he walked to the palm trees. He climbed before sunrise, the way he used to. His hands remembered the bark. His body remembered the angle. He came down with wine and carried it and sold what he could and ate with what he earned. He did not try to explain himself to the village. He did not try to reclaim anything. He was just James now, no chief, no title, no mansion on the hill. Just a man who climbed trees and came down smelling like work. He was not happy. He was not at peace. But he was present. Fully, completely present in his own life for the first time in years. Without performing. Without managing what people saw. Without running from the hollow in his chest, because the hollow was filled now, painfully, imperfectly, with something real. He thought about Ada every day. He thought about what she had said, that he had known. That some part of him had known every time he chose wrong, and that the knowing had made it heavier, not lighter. He thought she was right. He thought that was probably the truest thing anyone had ever said to him. There is a thing about wealth that comes from the wrong place. It does not feel like wealth when you have it. It feels like standing on something that is always shifting, always requiring maintenance, always threatening to give way. You spend every day of it performing stability you do not feel, buying things you hope will fill the space that the original wrong choice opened up, moving faster and faster so the quiet cannot catch you. And the quiet always catches you. It caught James in a mansion on a hill in the middle of a storm, standing barefoot in front of a red door, crying. It catches every man who makes that choice. Every person who goes to that river. Every one of them. Not because the river is evil. Not because wealth is wrong. But because wealth gotten from the wrong place, wealth paid for with your soul and someone else's love and a sealed room full of everything you abandoned, that kind of wealth is not wealth at all. It is a debt. And the debt collector never forgets. Never negotiates. Never lets you pay in installments. You pay with your peace, your love, your soul, and everything you built with borrowed light. And the only thing left after the payment, if you are lucky enough to survive the payment, is yourself. The original you. Small, unimpressive, without title or car or mansion. Standing in the morning with your own 2 hands and whatever you can build slowly, honestly, from what you actually have. That is the thing the shortcut never tells you. The long road is not the punishment. The long road is the only road where you arrive somewhere real.